St. Louis police officer is charged for taking out his cell phone and recording a deadly car crash in downtown St. Louis. The video shared on social media has gone viral. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ann Allred.
And I'm Kelly Jackson. This is connected to a high-profile case from almost a year ago when a mother and daughter were in town for a Drake concert. The two were killed as they walked across the street. Justina Coronel is here to explain the recent charge. Justina.
Well, this case will have a trial this summer, but the most recent charge involves an officer who wasn't even investigating the case. However, he's now involved.
The video circulating on social media shows the moment of impact. However, 5 on Your Side has decided to freeze the video right before impact, so you can still get an idea, the crux of the case. A St. Louis police officer was charged with a misdemeanor for misuse of official information by a public servant. Court documents say he shared the video through the app called Snapchat. It shows a car striking 2 pedestrians killed in downtown St. Louis almost a year ago. James Crow Jr., a 30-year veteran of the U.S. Attorney's Office, weighs in.
I'm sure neither the prosecutor nor the defense counsel is pleased with the fact that any evidence gets leaked.
The video captures the deadly moment on February 14th when Leticia Bracero and her 21-year-old daughter, Alyssa Cordova, were in the intersection of 18th and Olive. The man charged, Monte Henderson, faces first-degree manslaughter, armed criminal action, and DWI. Monte Henderson's attorney, Scott Rosenblum, said, quote, "It's disappointing. Leaking that type of information can affect my client's ability to obtain a fair trial." Crow said evidence should be saved for open court where it can be controlled.
When it's publicized through social media or otherwise, you can never be certain of that. It could be edited, it could be, you might see part of it, not all of it.
And it could impact jury selection.
Obviously, social media creates a 24-hour-a-day possibility for people to see information that could affect them coming into a courtroom as a juror.
Yet Crow said there's still a way to continue.
However, I will say this. We have selected juries in St. Louis, both in state court and federal court, in very highly publicized case. So there are procedures the court can follow.
Police said appropriate disciplinary action will be taken if the officer is found to have violated policy. I also spoke to the victim's family earlier today, who said their family continues to mourn, and the trial in July remains their focus.
The trial is officially underway for former Las Cruces police officer Brad Lunsford, accused of shooting and killing Presley Eze in August of 2022. Lunsford is facing a charge of involuntary manslaughter with a firearm enhancement. Diana Castillo has been in Las Cruces all day, and Diana gathered details of the case and trial. And we want to warn you, some of the details in video may be disturbing to some.
Estella, Brad Lunsford did not face a judge or a jury on Monday, as jury selection was on the docket and expected to last all day. This case dates back to August of 2022, when Brad Lunsford, a Las Cruces police officer at the time, was dispatched to a gas station after Presley Eze reportedly stole a beer. According to police documents, after failing to identify himself, Lunsford and another officer removed Eze from the car to detain him. This is when a scuffle ensued between Eze and the other officer. Now you can see in this body cam video, Eze is on top of the officer before placing his hand on the officer's taser, not deploying it. Officer Lunsford, who is behind him, then shoots him. The New Mexico Attorney General announced charges against Lunsford in 2023. A grand jury then indicted Lunsford with voluntary manslaughter with a firearm enhancement. The other officer involved was clear of any charges. Again, the jury trial is set to start on Tuesday afternoon, and KTSM will be in the courtroom. We'll, of course, bring you updates on air and online. In Las Cruces, I'm Diana Castillo, KTSM 9 News.
And it's important to note that this case will not be overseen by a local judge. The state Supreme Court appointed Judge Jim Foy of the 6th Judicial District in Silver City to facilitate this.
A third person has now died in a crash involving a former Missouri City police officer. And that officer has now been re-indicted in that case. Prosecutors have filed upgraded first-degree felony charges against Vladimir Viveros, the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office, saying they decided to re-indict based on a new law that could increase the punishment because Viveros was on duty and 3 people were killed. Police say he had hit a car back in June, killing Angela Stewart and her son Mason, but it was just recently that the person in the back of his patrol car, Michael Hawkins, died from his injuries in that wreck.
The gravity of the facts surrounding the deaths in this case, we thought it was appropriate, more appropriate to charge as a first degree rather than a second degree. But the passing of our third victim did play a role in our reconsideration of the appropriate charges.
Viveros is due back in court on February 11th. That's when a judge will hear arguments to increase his bond based on these new charges.
Good morning and welcome to the Bad Apple Report. It's 7:30 a.m. bright and early right here at home on the range. And thank you so much for being here today, folks. I really appreciate it. We're going to start it out in Alchua County, Florida, where the trial is set to begin for a lawsuit against former Alchua County Sheriff over alleged discrimination. Hey, what's going on here, buddy? Gainesville, Florida, according to the Alchua County courts, a lawsuit accusing former Alchua County Sheriff Clovis Watson Jr., Clovis, of discriminating against a white sheriff's deputy is going to trial on Monday. That's funny. Sergeant Kevin Davis filed the suit in February 2023. That's a ways back, you guys, accusing the sheriff of passing him over for promotions due to the fact he is white. Come on, Kevin. Come on. All right, whatever, Kevin. Okay, Watson. Whoa. Dang. So the sheriff resigned in October 2023, citing health problems. Dang. Along with a series of lawsuits and accusations from employees claiming their rights were violated. Oh, he's getting out of there. It don't work like that, though, Watson. Now you're on trial. Okay, the lawsuit began under Watson, but then continued under former Sheriff Emery Gainey, and currently continues under Sheriff Chad Scott as the new head of the ACS. Okay, you guys. They got big problems down there at Alchua. But for now, let's move on with the show. Thank you so much for being here today, folks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Travis. A former Olmsted County detention deputy, already serving a nearly 20-year prison sentence on federal child sex crimes, reaches a plea agreement with county prosecutors in another case. 47-year-old Matthew Adamson previously pled guilty in federal court after Rochester undercover officers say he tried to solicit sexual acts from a girl he believed to be 13 years old. Now, Adamson is also entering a plea of guilty in Olmsted County District Court to 4 counts of interference with privacy for taking screen images of naked inmates. A plea hearing has been scheduled for February 18th.
Breaking news on charges against the former Fed official. Steve Leisman's got the details. Steve.
Thank you, Melissa. Yes, the Justice Department just the last hour charged a former senior Federal Reserve official with conspiracy to commit economic espionage. The justice says a 63-year-old John Harold Rogers is alleged to have passed, quote, sensitive trade secret information from the Federal Reserve to co-conspirators in China. Rogers was said specifically to solicit briefing books for governors, proprietary data sets, and sensitive information about FOMC deliberations. Apparently, he printed this info out or sent it to his personal email in violation of Federal Reserve rules in preparation for trips to China. Rogers allegedly made false statements to the Federal Reserve's Inspector General about accessing and passage of this information, as well as its association with co-conspirators. He worked as a Fed senior advisor in the Division of International Finance from 2010 to 2021. These alleged actions ran from 2013 to 2025. In the indictment, it says that's even after he left the Fed. The Justice Department says the info was passed that Rogers passed was, quote, economically valuable. They went on to say that the data provided could allow China to manipulate U.S. markets. He provided info, quote, under the guise of teaching classes. The indictment cites 2 unnamed co-conspirators who the indictment says worked for the Chinese intelligence apparatus and presented themselves as graduate students. He was paid $450,000 in 2023 as a part-time professor at a Chinese university. The Fed declined to make any public comments about this, and the Federal Reserve Inspector General, who was involved in this but is quoted in this, could not immediately be reached for comment.
Uh-oh, this cop's had his charges dropped. Wonder if that means I gotta make a retraction. Never. Okay, charges dropped against Osceola County deputy arrested for crashing into state trooper. I stand by my scorn. Charges were dropped against an Osceola County deputy who was arrested for rear-ending a Florida Highway Patrol trooper guarding a construction site while drunk on a Florida turnpike Tuesday night, according to court documents. Now that first paragraph said while drunk. I didn't say it. A A spokesperson for FHP told the News that the incident's under review and additional information is unavailable at the time. State's attorney, the 9th Judicial Circuit, sent the following statement about the charges being dropped. Okay, the trooper wrote in the arrest report that, based on his observations, training, and experience, the deputy was not under the influence of alcohol or controlled substance. Well, that first paragraph up there said he was drunk, and that's what we're going with. The arrest report detailed the deputy did not demonstrate any signs of impairment during the standard field sobriety exercise, and the breath test results were .008 and blah, 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 which under the legal limit of .08. Supervisors from FHP contacted our office to notify us that, in consultation with their senior command staff and general counsel, there was no probable cause for the arrest. They requested the charge be dropped. Oh, okie dokie, charges dropped. Based on the charging affidavit, moving forward with prosecution on a misdemeanor charge of DUI, property damage, or personal injury would not have been ethically or legally appropriate. Our duty is to seek justice, not merely convictions. And in this case, the evidence simply didn't support the criminal charge. On Tuesday, Hunter Perkins, age 30, embedded the off-duty FHP car into a construction vehicle, then traveled an additional 600 feet before coming to a stop, the troopers claimed. And that's how it went down. Troopers said Perkins did not remember the crash or that the car he allegedly hit had blue lights on. I wonder why. He said he was driving and then he woke up in the ditch, the report said. That's what I'm alleging. Anyways. All right, so now troopers said Perkins passed a field sobriety test but admitted to drinking several glasses of wine while at a paint and sip event with his girlfriend. Oh my goodness. Okay, but the charges were dropped, you guys. Okay, so, well, because of that and the memory loss, they placed him under arrest. They said the trooper he hit had minor injuries. Wednesday, a spokesperson for the Alchua County Sheriff's Office said Perkins had been relieved of sworn duties and additional actions could be taken based on the outcome of the case. Well, he's off now, so it's very unfortunate to see a law enforcement officer. We're not going to read that. That's all we got on that guy. He got off. He'll probably get to keep his job, too. And he can go back to sipping and painting with his girlfriend. All right. On with the show.
We begin with the family of an Oklahoma prisoner allegedly killed by his cellmate is now taking legal action weeks after raising questions about his death and the length of his incarceration. They announced a lawsuit today against the Department of Corrections. We first told you about Marquel Ross' family in December. They told us he should have already been released when he died. They also said there were discrepancies surrounding his date of death and alleged DOC waited a week to notify them about the death. The department now addressing those claims. Further, what they say is misinformation about it. News 4's Tanner De Leon is back on the story tonight. Tanner, update us.
Well, the leaders with the Department of Corrections say they have done nothing wrong, and this is all part of a personal attack by a state lawmaker. But family of Marquel Ross say if things were done right inside the prison, he would still be here today.
The lack of transparency from the DOC, we have no other choice but to go this route because we're not getting the answers from them that we have asked for.
The journey for those answers now leading to a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections on behalf of Marquel Ross.
Very draining, very emotional, very heartbreaking.
LaBarth Law is representing the Rosses and have experience with the DOC already from a lawsuit filed last year involving accusations of inmates being held in showers for days and not given food or water.
This is an endemic problem with the Department of Corrections, it seems. We've all heard the term failing upward, and I think perhaps that's exactly what's going on with this particular director.
The Ross family claims DOC changed Marquel's release date multiple times and transferred him to different prisons without any notification or documentation before he ultimately ended up in the state penitentiary, Oklahoma's highest maximum security facility, for someone who had no prior charges and was not considered dangerous. They also claim they were not notified when he was beaten to death inside his jail cell, only to find out days later by another inmate's family member right after Ross was sent off by DOC to be cremated.
Why wasn't, we contacted, why the cover-ups, why is the different changes in the release dates.
However, DOC leaders say this is a case of misinformation led by Representative Justin Humphrey, a frequent critic of the agency. In a lengthy press release today, the DOC argues against multiple claims the Ross family has made. They say Marquel had 8 disciplinary violations resulting in his moves to different prisons. Leaders also say that led to him losing credit for time served. While at Lawton Correctional Facility, DOC says Ross spit in the face of a transport officer, saying Ross's escalating aggression and repeated misconduct was the reason he was then moved to OSP. The DOC also says within hours of Ross's death, they tried contacting his family but were unsuccessful over the course of multiple days due to phone numbers not working and Tulsa police unable to track down his mother because they say the address on her driver's license was invalid. Still, the big question from Ross's family, their lawyers, and Humphrey is, where is the documentation showing all this occurred and why can't they get it through an open records request?
Getting this information from them is almost impossible. I have requested it and I have not received much the information I want yet.
DOC leaders telling me Thursday the records they are requesting contain confidential information and they would need anyone requesting them to fill out a form first.
I don't know who they're protecting. If the family doesn't have a right to know this information, then who in the world does?
We want them to take accountability. We want them to tell us what we basically already know. You know, we know, we just want to see if they're going to be transparent and have the documentation to back up.
Another point of contention, the date of Ross's death. The family says they were told by the DOC he died on the 17th, but the autopsy said the 12th. Well, today, the DOC said in his press release Ross died on the 12th.
Tonight, new changes on the way for the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office, months after the death of an inmate once in their custody.
Days after an arrest for trespassing this past June, Rollin Hill suffered a medical emergency, which medical examiners later ruled as a homicide.
Now, Alex Littlehales shows us the policy changes just announced by the sheriff in the aftermath of Hill's death. Alex.
Well, in the same month, 3 former deputies appeared in court facing charges of second-degree murder. Virginia Beach Sheriff Rocky Holcomb announced changes to the agency's jail and arresting policies, the latest steps taken after the death of the 34-year-old. After courtroom video revealed the arrest of 34-year-old Rollin Hill. At the center of his death investigation, Sheriff Rocky Holcomb announced changes to the agency's leadership and oversight policies.
They lost their son, you know, and even though there are changes in policies that was recently announced, you know, by Rocky, the sheriff, there's still a lot of work needs to be done.
Restraint techniques used to secure Hill's arms and legs, seen here, have previously been eliminated by the agency. Newly announced Thursday is the revival of the major rank to improve oversight, awarded to a 22-year veteran of the sheriff's office. Also announced a second captain added to the jail's correctional operations.
Definitely took our voices into consideration, and I do see some of the things, but we talked about a lot of things. You know, it wasn't just the restraint system, it wasn't just the oversight, it was about culture, changing the culture of.
Dr. Eric Majette, president of the Virginia Beach NAACP, says the additional changes come after a recent meeting between Sheriff Holcomb and Hill's family. Dr. Majette believes the changes are a positive step forward, but says the family is still fighting for transparency and accountability.
What if we would have had those policies in place prior to the situation Mr. Hill may be living today?
Sheriff Holcomb also announced the hiring of a consultant to look over the agency's use of force and resistance policies. Sheriff Holcomb also announced additional training for all deputies ranked higher than sergeant. I'm Alex Littlehales for 13 News Now.
The 3 former deputies charged in Hill's death are set for 3 separate trials beginning this September.
Breaking news, we have a bad apple out of the big apple. Who is it? It's an off-duty New York City police officer who was arrested Friday afternoon in Staten Island and charged with 2 counts of third-degree assault. Who is it? It's Serena DeJesus, a 25-year-old NYPD officer, and she was taken into custody at approximately 3:20 p.m. within the confines of the 120 precinct, which covers the northern part of Staten Island. Details regarding the circumstances of the alleged assault were not immediately available. Come on. All right, we're going to have to speculate. NYPD did not provide additional information about the incident, or whether the officer was suspended following the arrest. Of course not. They're just like, whatever. Third-degree assault in New York is a misdemeanor charge that typically involves causing injury to another person. Oh, she's a bruiser. Of course. She's an NYPD loser. She made it on the Bad Apple Report. Serena DeJesus, age 25. Let's move on.
Body cam video of 43-year-old Robert Brooks' limp body being tossed, yanked, punched, kicked by officers at Marcy Correctional Facility outside of Utica sent shockwaves across the state and country in December.
Today, State Senator Jeremy Cooney became the latest lawmaker to propose a bill to address abuse at state prisons. Robert Brooks' father calls his son's death divine intervention. In a one-on-one conversation, Robert Ricks tells me he believes God is exposing the evil lurking within the criminal justice system.
Nobody could have told me that there were 15, 16 men that would jump on you with handcuffs on. Nobody could have made me believe that until I seen it with my eyes.
The graphic video of Robert Brooks Sr. being beaten by officers at Marcy Correctional Facility is part of a criminal investigation and the basis for a civil rights lawsuit filed by the family.
I couldn't do that to their children, even knowing that they did that to mine. I couldn't do that to them, knowing that they did that to my son. I couldn't.
Seated among several posters of black and brown men and women who have died at the hands of law enforcement, Robert Ricks says his son's death must not be in vain.
So for me, it's about the fight. It's about the fight. This is the hill that I will die on. I believe that my son died so other children may live. I believe that my son died so that there are some fathers that will make it home from prison.
Tuesday evening, February 4th, Ricks and Mary Brooks plan to share their son's story and listen to the testimony of others impacted by the criminal justice system. The Police Accountability Board is organizing the forum with other community partners.
We got to do something besides march.
The irony, Ricks says, after serving a 12-year sentence for assault, his son was preparing to come home and help his dad, who's been mentoring young people for some 30 years in Rochester, providing homework help, meals, a safe space, and activities.
And then they learn how to advocate for themselves. They learn how to find their voice.
This father of three says although his oldest son was denied a second chance, he will continue to find ways to help others experience the power of grace.
I want to try to do everything that I can do to prevent our young people from going to jail, but I also want to do everything that I can do to assure the fact that when they do, they become members of the Second Chance Club.
Prison reform activists rallying in Harlem, continuing to demand justice for Robert Brooks after his death at Marcy Correctional Facility in December. The 43-year-old inmate could be seen on body cam footage being beaten by more than a dozen corrections officers before his death.
Absolutely unacceptable. It shows just how systemic racism is still embedded in all of our institutions. I'm tired of watching, other black people get murdered on camera.
While 13 of those staff members have been suspended without pay and another staff member resigned, demonstrators say they want the consequences to go even further. They're calling for arrests. Standing outside 125th Street and 7th Avenue, ralliers chanted and called on Governor Kathy Hochul to permanently close the prison, turning it into a memorial designated Robert Brooks Park. They're also pushing for law enforcement officials to charge the 14 staff members involved.
Arrest them at least for the assault. Hold them until you get the medical exam and then upgrade it to murder. They won't even do that. What they're telling us, what the system and the state of New York is telling us, we don't care about black people.
Days after the incident, New York Attorney General Letitia James released the body cam footage showing the shocking scene, a group of corrections officers kicking and punching Brooks while handcuffed. The results of Brooks's autopsy have not been made public, but preliminary findings from a medical examination indicate his cause of death as asphyxia due to compression of the neck. New York Attorney General Letitia James has appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the incident. Governor Hochul also directed the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision to terminate the individuals involved, which includes corrections officers, sergeants, and a nurse. But many at the rally say that's not enough.
It's been 52 days, and those correctional officers are still enjoying their family. We want accountability. We want transparency. We want those cops and the nurses to be held responsible.
Well, we did it. Another batch of bad apples. Yes, sirree. And I'm going to whip up another batch of bad apples just for you. I guarantee. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. bright and early. Have a great day, folks.